very possible, but in fact likely, probable. I'm sincerely hoping that that projection of what could happen in 2012, which, by the way, I don't think is a magic date. I'm in total agreement with everyone who says it's not going to be midnight on Friday, I think it is, on 2012, December 21, when Georgia's going to have a whole bunch of us on coast. I mean, it would really ruin the show. Or provide really an interesting ending. We know in the history of the Earth, if you look at larger time frames, like millions of years, that we've had all kinds of interesting things happen. And global catastrophes, global extinction. However, most people understand that these things have happened because of these guys. The dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago in an event which still is not really understood by science. There's lots of different theories, what did them in, why did a whole set of species, families disappear, allowing the rise of mammals and Homo sapiens someday and all that. The science keeps changing. They've now got down to the fact that there was some kind of catastrophe, but in fact they really are thinking in very Newtonian terms, like asteroids hitting, like planets coming by and tipping the axis that way, because that does work in Newtonian physics. I, again, am looking at a much deeper potential cause, and that is that the physics itself modulates the evolution of life on Earth because of long-term cycles that we really don't understand. It's interesting that the dinosaurs disappeared about 65 million years ago. Well, remember how I showed you the galaxy and I said it took 250 million years to go around once? If you divide 250 million years by 4, I'll get to why I divide by 4 in a minute, it gives you 60, 60, 60, 60, which is within, close number of folk music, as my siblings used to say, to the 65 million. Because the error bars in measuring these things is not, you're not looking at one particular moment at midnight. You're looking at a window again because of the uncertainties of measurement. Well, why 4? Because that's how you can divide up a circle. So you have 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees. And in the physics, we know that 90 degrees is a bad thing. That things happen at 90 degrees, that physical changes really occur in this vibrational torsion field etheric background at 90-degree intervals. So it takes the Earth 240 million years to go around the Earth. Well, a quarter of that is about 60 million years. The dinosaurs bought it 65 million years ago. I'm looking much more at a fundamental hyperdimensional reason why the dinosaurs got phased out of existence and mammals got phased into existence. And we'll have to see in the out years, as they say, whether that line of questioning is productive. In a more recent historical time frame, we have these things scattered all over the world. Ancient monuments, which obviously were built with extraordinary GNP, the combined resources of entire cultures devoted to the single task of setting up massive stones, bringing them in from hundreds of miles away under conditions that were extraordinarily difficult. Tasked to do what? Well, tasked maybe to connect us between what's going on Earth, what's going on in the sky, and to memorialize the fact that things change. We look at the pyramids. It is my model that the pyramids at Giza, among other things, were built as a huge celestial clock, a kind of a countdown clock to these periodic changing times. And an awful lot of effort, massive amounts of effort. I mean, 6 million tons of limestone stacked up in one of these, like the Great Pyramid. Why all that effort? Well, was it to, deify a king? Or did it have a larger social parameter? Did it have a larger social meaning, which is why everybody chipped in and got together and did this, because if they didn't, their grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren, their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren would be caught unawares when things changed again. Again, these are models that we are looking at. We have not developed them anywhere near to the extent that they will ultimately be developed. But it's important to look at these monuments around the world to see if, in fact, they could be harbingers of what is to come. which, of course, when you look at the global pattern of these sacred sites all over the world, and this is from David Flynn, a diagram he worked up some years ago, you find that all of these amazing sacred places are not scattered around the Earth at random. They're in a hyperdimensional torsion field pattern. Well, whoa! Someone is trying to tell us something, and it's in all different places and cultures, which means all these guys either independently figure this out, which is not likely, or, as Joseph Farrell says, these are all legacy cultures that came from a unified global culture early on that went through this catastrophic change, and they built these things in this geometry so they would remind future generations, this is what's coming and this is what you need to prepare for, and God help you, maybe you can figure out how to make it stop. And I think that's what we are heirs to in terms of these amazing places. So, with that as the model, one of the things that I have been looking to do for many years is to go to some of these places and actually try to measure the physics of these structures, to measure whether or not they were rotating and resonating with the background hyperdimensional torsion field itself. And this, of course, is a diagram you're familiar with, the fact that the torsion field produces energy upwellings inside rotating bodies. At 19.5, you have the double tetrahedral force pattern inside the rotating sphere. Bottom line, in Dark Mission, Mike and I, in Chapter 2, laid out in pretty good detail a coherent model for why this physics is A, real, and B, is affecting all of us even now, even as we're sitting in this room, and will potentially affect the entire world circa 2012 if the worst-case models are, in fact, correct. Which, of course, is when NBC and SyFy come back into the picture, because they basically said, hey, Dick, would you like to take a trip on us and go and measure some pyramids? And, of course, Robin and I said, well, let's think about it. Actually, I did. We have it on tape. You know, we had a producer who sat in my living room when they came to shoot us for the Crystal Skull, and he said after he'd seen all the stuff on the moon, he said, how would you like your own special? And I said, I'm not so sure. And he absolutely freaked out. He could not believe anybody would turn down a network television special. I just did it because I wanted to pull his tail. And he responded so elegantly. Well, the bottom line is we actually wound up in New York, and we wound up with the conversations that led to 2 hours, of which I had a fairly good chunk. The only thing that was missing in those 2 hours was they never showed you really what we found. So, this morning, first for your eyes, you're going to see what Robin and I went climbing up and down a lot of pyramids in the dark, freezing our tails off, to bring to you. So we went first to Teotihuacan. Now, remember, it's television. In the show, remember how Lester said, oh, and Hoagland then had to go to No, we did it backwards. We went to Teotihuacan first, then we went to Guatemala. See, you can't trust television. You cannot trust television. First rule, do not trust television. Doesn't mean you don't watch it, but you have to correlate it with other data inputs as you do the net. I mean, the net is an amazing tool, just don't trust it. Don't trust one website, don't trust one source, don't trust one blog. You've got to sift. You have to, and it makes it so easy now. Anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. It's a shame we don't teach kids in school how to really use the net, although I haven't been into a class yet in computer science recently that actually showed what they're doing with kids. But based on some kids that I know, they don't know how to use the web as a tool for really finding stuff out. And that should be something that in the next push for education, we bring a lot of kids back in the 21st century, because the web is our global library. If you know how to use it, it's an exquisite tool. I could not do what Enterprise does in opposition to the US government and God knows who else unless we had the web to use. Anyway, so we went to Teotihuacan. This is the layout. And one of the things you need to understand is that Teotihuacan, big surprise, is laid out with redundant 19.5s all over the place, starting with its location. It's at 19.5 on the planet. And Harleston, when he did his surveying work in the 1970s, found that